Welcome back to Broadcast Brains at SEMPTY 2017. Next up in our interview schedule, I'd like to introduce Bruce Takahashi from Ross Video. Thanks for coming on board today, Bruce.
Pleasure to be here.
Bruce, your specialty is robotics. You're the product manager for the robotic systems at Ross, and you guys have an amazing range of different systems with the CamBots, the Furio, and the development of control systems and things for applications all over the world. Maybe you could just fill us in a bit more with Furio. We've seen some new developments there, and it'd be really good to get a little bit more of a take on what you've released with the new Furio SE.
Right, so this year we've introduced a whole new version of the Furio. The Furio has been around for 7-8 years now, but we wanted to take all the things that we've learned from past experiences and address some of the shortcomings that people have identified and say, hey, it would be great if you could do this or that. And we've tried to implement as many of those as we could. At the same time, so we want to improve the performance as well as the usability and the ease of maintenance, and also make it safer. So we've added a bunch of safety features to the Furio now that really think makes it the safest dolly system on the market today. So with that, we sort of strip things down, right down to the bare bones and start over again. We kept the same track dimensions so that you could retrofit onto existing installations or add them on. But from there, we sort of started from the ground up and said, okay, we're going to redo all the electronics and how things go together to make it easier to manage and quicker to put together. And then we want to go to the lift and make that taller, because one of the things that we noticed was a number of our customers were actually putting the rails up on platforms to get the height they wanted. So we said, okay, we really need to address that. So now we've got a lift that goes over 2.2 meters from the ground up to the head, which gives you plenty of range in terms of getting shots from all sorts of angles. And then we increase the range of the lift as well. So it's almost a meter of range on the lift, which gives you a great variety of shots. You can go from eye line for someone sitting all the way up to looking down on a person standing beside the desk. So, and with that, there's a level of creativity that's been opened up. So now you can do, trucking shots while the lift is moving and you're zooming in, and you can really start to replicate the jib shots that people are really fond of that produce a really dynamic feel to production. So that was the performance side, and on the safety side, we wanted to make sure that if anything ever did go wrong, that you could quickly and safely bring the dolly to a stop. So we put e-stops front and back. We've got remote e-stops that can be added into the system as well, and we've got warning lights that indicate the system's about to move. All these things that make sure that if there's any concerns about the safety of having a dolly in your studio, that they've been properly addressed. And then the whole thing goes together a lot quicker and easier than the old system. So from start to finish, installing a Furio, once the tracks are down, you can get it up and running in less than half an hour.
Right. Well, certainly that's a great improvement with the new Furio. Now, the Furio SE is certainly very much designed as a manual operation type rig. You've got an operator trying to go and create these fantastic creative shots, and I know from our experience with Furio over the years that they're the shiny shots that producers love.
Yeah.
And certainly from the idea of having greater lift and more flexibility, I think all we're going to do is be able to add to the quality of these shots that Furio can produce.
Yeah. I mean, so Furio is great for live performance for sure, and I think, we've got the control systems that go along with that, whether it's a remote pan bar or a joystick solution, and with the speed of the dolly and the speed of the head as well, it provides a really dynamic look and feel to your shots. But it's also great for studio applications. So we do have two versions of the Furio. There's the live version, which we used to call RC, but we've renamed it as Furio SE Live. And then we have the studio version. And they're a different control system. Now you have the ability to store shots and recall them automatically. And this was what would interact with your newsroom controls or automated control systems. And now you've got something that's very much about automation and efficiency and repeatability, which you can combine with the same creativity that you have with the live system. So you can create those same fluid dynamic moves. The main difference is now that you can record them and replay them time and time again, so you get better repeatability and quality in your shots as well.
Okay. Well, Furio SE is certainly quite an exciting new range. Now, from that point of view, between the SE Live and Studio, they're different hardware packages and control systems, is that correct?
Yeah, so there are different models of the SE in terms of the payload capacity. So the Furio line has two different size heads. We have a VR100 and a VR600. VR100 is actually new as well. So we took the old VR1, which is the original Furio head, and rebuilt that as well and made that a little stronger. So now it went from a 15 kilo payload up to a 20 kilo payload, which is enough to put a mid-size prompter on it, which is nice for for box camera and lens. The VR600 is a much beefier head, so it can go up to 57 kilos, which is plenty to put a prompter and talent monitor and a good size lens and camera on there as well. So you've got two choices really in terms of the size of head based on the payload and where you're going to be using that. We couple those with our Smart Shell control system. And Smart Shell has evolved quite a bit over the years as well. That was originally the Furio control system from the FX Motion days. And that's evolved into more of a server client's architecture. It controls our CAMBot line as well as the Furios. But we've been adding a lot of usability features over the last couple of years based on, again, feedback from our customers and requests for things to make the workflow a lot easier to get through. And so we've made a lot of improvements on that side as well.
Great. Now, you haven't just been doing some work on Furio, also you've got some new products in the CAMBot range. So we've got the new 600 series. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about that, especially for the world of remote production, or I should say single-person production with newsrooms and the like.
Yeah, right. So, the CAMBots had their origins in that, in allowing people to do full newsroom productions with a single camera operator. And back when the Cambotics company was founded, that was what their objective was, to create a free roaming pedestal and a series of heads that would allow you to automate your newsrooms. So what we've done this year, so in the past there were basically three models of CAMBots. We had the 500 series, which was the smallest head, and then a 600 series of mid-size, and then the 700, which was the largest head. And along with that, we also had the free roaming pedestal, but that only came with the 700 series head. So very beefy head, payload of 90 kilos, meant to carry very large cameras and lenses. But we found over the past few years is that people aren't using giant lenses and cameras anymore. More and more people are going towards box cameras and ENG style lenses. So the payload capacity required was really going down, and the 700 series at 90 kilos was overkill for many applications. So what we've done is we've taken our 600 series head, the mid-range head, and put that on the free roaming pedestal base, and we're offering that with two different versions of lift. So we've got a two-stage lift, which gives you a little less range, but it's a more economical choice, or the full three-stage lift that was available with the 700. So now we have two versions, the 600XY S2, the two-stage, and the 600XY S3 for the three-stage. And then the really nice thing is that the price point that we're able to achieve with these new versions has opened the door to a lot of applications that in the past people would have looked at the 700XY, for example, and said, well, that's too expensive, it's overkill for my application, and they would have moved on to just taking a pan tilt and putting it on a tripod, and, okay, we'll just use more cameras to get the same array of shots. So what we're finding is that the economics says that if I use a 600XY, I can actually achieve, with just three of those cameras, the same number of shots as I could with 6 cameras on tripods, but I get a whole lot more flexibility. And now I can introduce movement in my shots, I can do trekking shots, I get more variety of positions on the floor. I'm not stuck with just the 5 or 6 positions on my tripods are on. So it's a lot more flexible, a lot more creative, and at the same cost when you factor in the lenses and the cameras and the prompters and back-end equipment and so on. So it's really opened a lot of people's eyes to using free roaming pedestals, where before they would have thought, it's too expensive for me, I can't afford that, I'm just going to use fixed heads and make do with that.
Okay, so these systems also have very accurate encoders, I'm assuming, for augmented reality, virtual reality type applications. So is this something also that you are using these systems more and more for as well?
That's a really good point. So again here, because the 600XY as well as the 700XY do support tracking data for augmented or virtual reality, you've opened up another avenue as well. So I'm not just restricted to a hard set. I can now introduce virtual, I can do augmented. So you get all that, again, almost for free at this point when you look at it compared to putting pan tilt heads on tripods. And again, with the movement on the floor, I think that's the biggest thing when you talk about robotics and virtual, is if I'm moving the camera, not just pan and tilt and zoom, but if I'm moving the camera around objects, and I get different perspectives of those 3D objects, that's what makes virtual look real.
Yep.
And that's really what makes it pop. And at that point, it becomes a lot more interesting visually than just fixed camera with a green screen and a virtual background.
Absolutely, and with the way studios are going these days, people want to get more and more out of their sets and things. Virtual reality, augmented reality type studio systems are really the way of the future. So it's an exciting time.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks, Bruce. Thanks for coming on to our set today with Broadcast Brains. and hope you have a great show, and
All right.
welcome to Australia.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
All right.
Right, we'll leave that. We'll run through with some more information with the Ross Cambot pedestal range right through here. Thank you.
It's the home of the Mets, obviously, SNY. We also are the home of UConn. Great ancillary programming for the Jets, the New York Jets. And we have a sports show that services the whole region, the tri-state region, as far as all the sports that are concerned for the area. So we do a nightly news show called Geico Sports Night, and then we're covering everything else under the sun. That's basically the gist of SNY right now, but bread and butter is the Mets, and their fans, and that's what we do. The 51st Street studio, which is where we were Midtown before, we grew out of pretty quickly. I think they grew out of it probably by year 3, but they just had to stay in one place for a little while, and then they worked their way up to this, and it was an amazing venture, and it's been great. The design group was an old design group that I had used at ESPN to launch Studio X, Sports Center. So they came here, they pitched, and we loved them the most, and they did a great job with it. The reason we used robotics was the big word, efficiency, the big E word. We needed to man 2 studios, all in basically a primetime window, if you will, 5 p.m. all the way into midnight. That's our basically viewership area on a regular basis. And we needed to do that as efficiently as possible. We wouldn't have been able to do that with the 2 studios that we have if we didn't do robotics. Right now, what's manned in here is a jib camera and shortly a Steadicam. Everything else is robotic. So it's come in very handy for us in that sense.
So once we decided to go with Ross and install the Cambot and the Furio camera systems, it's been a pretty easy process. We have in total 6 of the Cambot 700s, and then we have another Cambot 600 which has full robotics for the pan, tilt, and ped, but 3 of the 700 full robots are in one studio. In another studio we have another 3. And the reason we went with the 4th camera, so to speak, or the 7th camera, depending on how you're looking at it, that camera is easy for us to move between the 2 studios. And then we also have a Furio SE, and that's been pretty amazing. That's set up in our 3rd studio. It's the one on the track, and we use it for promotions and as a cut-in studio, and the moves are beautiful.
We wouldn't have been able to get off the ground with the personnel we have without doing it this way with robotics. The fact that we have Furio in Studio 42, I can do a promo in there while I'm doing a show out of another studio, unmanned. One person does it all. Same thing with going between Studio 41 and 31, all robotic for the most part. Camera shots are set. I'm very happy with that when I can go from one studio to another, call it up with one person, and we're good to go. Breaking news scenarios got a little bit easier because I don't have a guy running back and around. We don't have that kind of staffing during the morning. So if there's a breaking news scenario in the morning, I've got 1 or 2 people to do all my technical work. So that really frees up a few hands when we have the robotic systems in place.
We haven't been getting a lot of feedback or intensive questions from the operators because I think that the product itself is intuitive, and they've been having a fairly easy time using it and getting the shots that they like. It speaks for Ross and for the product itself that it's pretty easy to use. Rawson's been pretty receptive to any questions that we've had. We've gotten pretty much everything we've wanted resolved fairly quickly, which is nice.
The one thing I really look forward to is augmented reality in that studio. We don't have a place for it anywhere else right now, but when we go into 42, I can see the potential of augmented reality behind that beautiful cityscape that we have. I think it's the perfect space for it. You could take it a step further down the line, green screen the room, and you could do a whole little studio insert in there. That's virtual reality. From a technology standpoint, we made the right investment.